Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Onward Ozarks. I am Randy Wilburn, and I am thrilled to be your host and moderator today as the founder and host of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. It's an honor to be with you all today. Today, we have a very exciting session lined up, focusing on the future of air services at Northwest Arkansas National Airport, or XNA as the cool kids call it. XNA serves as our region's gateway to the world, and its success relies heavily on the partnerships with the airlines that cater to our travel needs. We are fortunate to have two distinguished guests with us this morning. Andrew Branch, the Chief Operating Officer at XNA, will share his insights into the airport's current operations and future plans. Andrew has been a vital part of XNA since 2019, and his extensive background in business development and finance brings a wealth of knowledge to our discussion. Joining Andrew is Edward Shelswell-White, the Chief Vision and Customer Officer at Signal Aviation Consulting. With more than 35 years of experience in the aviation industry, Edward has a deep understanding of passenger needs and air service routes. His expertise will shed light on how XNA can continue to expand and improve its services. And as a special treat, we have a fantastic giveaway for our participants today. Yes, you heard it right. Two lucky attendees will win $250 airline gift cards. Remember, you must be pre-registered and present during the drawing to win. So stay tuned to the very end. Thank you all for joining us this morning. Let's dive into our discussion and explore the exciting future of air services at XNA. Andrew and Edward, welcome to Onward Ozarks.
Thank you, Randy. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's really, really good to have you guys here today. And we had a chance to talk a little bit about what you're working on and all of the nuances of what it takes to create a growing and thriving regional airport. And XNA certainly qualifies as that. And just to kind of tell you a quick story, when I first moved here in 2013, well, before I even moved here in 2013, I flew into XNA, and as I was landing, I was looking at the cow pastures on either side of the runway, and I was like, where am I? I'm certainly not on the Northeast anymore. And that's always been in the back of my mind since the first time that I got here. And literally, I was in the airport 2 weeks ago, and it has a Slim's chicken. It's got Einstein bagels. I got a nice bagel sandwich before I got on my flight. It is light years beyond where it was just 10 years ago when I moved here. And so I got to say, Andrew, you guys are doing an amazing job transforming what was a small airport into something to really behold. And obviously the construction is a testament to that and what we're seeing in terms of the growth here in Northwest Arkansas. So this question is for either of you. And I know we always like to have a little fun on this program, but have you ever known anyone that prefers the middle seat on a plane? And if so, can you introduce that person to me?
I definitely have never met that person. I know I'm not that person. That's not my favorite spot.
No,
Yeah, Randy, I've never known anybody who would prefer a middle seat. The closest I could probably come to that, I used to work for Southwest Airlines for 22 years, and the iconic founder of Southwest, Herb Kelleher, used to joke about, he was asked by somebody on a panel once, how do you keep the open seat next to you? Because Southwest has unassigned seating for now. Right. You show up, you take the first seat available, and the trick was, how do you make sure no one sits next to you? And his answer was, well, you sit down in the aisle, and when someone comes and says, is that seat taken? You look at them slowly and say, yes, by the Lord, and no one will take that seat.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, that's hilarious. That's a good story. And it is great you told that Herb Kelleher story because, he was definitely a maverick in the airline industry. And I mean, we're still talking about him and really his airline to this day when we talk about Southwest and the impact that
Yeah.
they've had in multiple markets. So Ed, tell us just a little bit about yourself. I did tease you out a little bit, but just give our audience just a better understanding of who you are as a consultant in this industry.
Sure, Randy. I mean, just to put simply, our business is built on providing actionable intelligence to aviation leaders, in particular airports, but not just airports, so that they can make uh, management decisions in time to affect our outcomes. There's airlines in particular these days look for airports to provide a lot of the support to make their service successful, yet they don't give airports the tools or the information necessary
Mhm.
to know how things are performing. We try to fill that gap so that airports can be more successful.
Okay. All right. And Andrew, give us a little bit more of a Cliff Note version of what you do on a daily basis there at XNA.
I jokingly tell people I'm in charge of handling all the customer complaints, but I'm responsible for XNA operates independently of any of the cities or counties around here that form the authority. So we have a police department, a fire department. I have operations personnel that are making sure the runways are safe. Maintenance personnel fixing anything from air conditioners to vehicles, just whatever's going on. So we have constant activity with all that, and then in addition to that, I still maintain the business development side of things. I work with Edward and his team, and Edward hit the nail on the head. We engaged them a few years back because, quite honestly, airports just don't get any information from the airlines. They don't share it, and I understand why. A lot of it is they don't want that to become public information. But we needed more information to know just how are things going with the airlines, because they don't really tell you. You have to tease out little small tidbits from them occasionally. So
Yeah, yeah. It's almost like two ships passing in the night, right? You guys are there operating the airport and they're there flying in and out of the airport, but like it's where do you guys coalesce and connect together? And speaking of the airport itself, tell us a little bit about some of the airlines that currently fly out of XNA, especially for people that might be watching this that are new to the area or that are thinking about moving to the area, or even some people that have really never spent any time at XNA. Tell us a little bit about the traffic at XNA.
sure. So we have 6 airlines offering 22 nonstop destinations. Some of those are seasonal. So we have American, United, and Delta. We consider them the legacy kind of traditional airlines. And then we have Allegiant, Frontier, and Breeze that are our often less than daily seasonal routes, more leisure focused, low cost carriers. Uh, and then yeah, we kind of have a variety of routes from both coasts that those airlines offer.
Yeah, and I've noticed that there are a lot more nonstops to certain cities, which is really nice. Like you can get a nonstop to LaGuardia Airport. There's a nonstop to DCA, which for those that's the main airport there, Washington National. It's right in the heart of the nation's capital. Nonstop to LAX. So you can pretty much get from XNA from Northwest Arkansas to both coasts on one flight, which is key, right? Because I remember when I lived in Atlanta. I took for granted the fact that literally I could get on a flight and go anywhere in one flight, which, as we all know from air travel stories, is a blessing in and of itself.
Absolutely. Yeah. For the size market we compete very favorably. And I mean, obviously a lot of that is attributed to the strong business presence that we have. We wouldn't have some of these nonstop destinations if not for the corporate customers that we have flying through the airport. So it's great to have that kind of offering at an airport this size.
Yeah. So what have you heard from the local marketplace? What is the groundswell of interest when it comes to new routes or new airlines that would come to Northwest Arkansas? What do you how do you typically field those questions? How do you answer them? And what is your resolve as the COO of XNA to try to meet the needs of the local airline consumer?
Yeah. So, I mean, the number one question we get everywhere we go that I think has probably been a question that our airport management's gotten at XNA since it opened was, when is Southwest Airlines coming? We still don't have any updates on that. Hopefully someday. The big hole in our route map, if you will, is kind of west and northwest. So we get a lot of requests for San Francisco, for Seattle, Salt Lake City, And then to the east, Boston is a common request, but these decisions on which routes airlines fly are driven by traffic and demonstrated traffic they see connecting through the current hubs, and then also maybe business they feel like they could create if they offered the route. And we just haven't had any airlines willing to step up and offer those routes. Phoenix was a big one for us, and American started offering that last year. And from reports from them, again, they don't share a lot of information, but that it's exceeded all expectations. And so that route has been very successful for them.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
west and northwest, that's what people want.
Okay. And to follow up with that, Ed, I have a question for you as a national consultant. If and when a airline like Southwest comes into a local market, right? Just so any market for that matter, with the idea that I guess in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, that just means lower fares or certain routings are going to be cheaper than they have traditionally been. What is the real answer to that when people are asking for Southwest to come to their area or to their region? Is it what people think it's going to be, or talk a little bit about that? Because I think it would be good to maybe answer those questions for people that are always asking the same question to understand the ramifications behind that question.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, Randy. It would probably be 60-minute answer if I wanted it to be. In fairness to you and your listeners, I won't. So I think there's one caveat I would give you, and that's that anybody who follows the industry would know that Southwest right now is getting more interest from institutional investors than they're used to getting. One in particular who is making a play to have the company significantly change its business model and its leadership, including the board. So depending on how successful this company, Elliott Investment Management, may or may not be, that may alter the answer if you look into the future. But if you put that aside for a minute, and just deal with Southwest traditionally, one of the geniuses of Southwest is the strength of its brand, which is people who have never flown Southwest, whose airports don't have Southwest, still perceive Southwest to be a high customer service, low fare airline. And I think part of that is true, especially if you don't have status on a carrier, you'll probably get better treatment on Southwest than you will get from almost anybody else. The extent to which they're a low fare carrier is hotly debated at this point. So if Southwest were to enter a market like Northwest Arkansas, where they aren't currently, there probably would be some stimulation of traffic and some lowering of fares, but not probably on the order that people historically think, where they come in and the fares drop 75% and traffic grows 800-fold, which used to happen in the 90s. There's been so much what they call cost convergence in the airline industry because of fuel costs and labor costs in particular, that it's hard, that no one carrier has as dramatic a cost advantage as they used to have in order to be as stimulative with fares as they used to be. And it's not just Southwest.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. And again, I think it's always good to understand that. And I have flown Southwest, and sometimes their fares can be as comparable with all the legacy carriers. So it's not like it's going to be an end all be all, although that free baggage is always a big thing. So
and that is a big part of their brand.
Yes,
is the ability for anybody to take up to 3 bags up to a certain weight.
Yeah,
that's a big deal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Andrew, I have a question for you with regard to XNA. And you mentioned this earlier, and we want to talk a little bit more about this. About some destinations have like 1 or 2 flights a week, while others have 5 to 6 flights going there 7 days a week. And so you talked a little bit about the differences with some of the flights that you get there. Like I can get to Atlanta several times a day out of XNA. I think there might be a flight to Tampa a couple of times a week. But talk about just the frequency of the different cadence of that and why it's important to get more destinations served by XNA.
Absolutely. So airports and airlines and the whole air travel industry love acronyms. And so the one I'll use today is PDUs. So this is the way they measure traffic. It's passengers daily each way. And so when we look at daily service or we look at less than daily service, it's all about, can you fill up an airplane? So if the airplane has 80 seats. So like say an Embraer 175, which is what American Airlines flies a whole lot of out of here. Well, if you have 80 passengers a day, you can fill that plane daily and it works great. If you have 30 PDUs, maybe you fly that flight 2 or 3 times a week to fill that 80 seat plane enough to make it work. And so it really just comes down to the number of people that this market has going to a destination daily as to whether you can fill up a plane. Dallas, for instance, and of course that's not Dallas traffic, but connecting through the hub. We have 8 to 9 frequencies a day with American Airlines. Well, it's easy to fill up a plane when you're pushing them through to all these other hub or to these other destinations. But Tampa, we might have, I can tell you, so like the end of last year we had, and Tampa's not a great one because it's pretty good. It's about 99 people a day. So that's pretty strong. But a lot of things like, a Seattle, we have 30 a day. It's just not enough to fill a plane every day.
Yeah.
It's a function of people going to a destination from a market.
Yeah. Are there any markets that people would be surprised to see a strong interest in from travelers that might traditionally, maybe historically, we haven't really seen in these parts?
Boston used to be stronger. So that one's not as strong. I don't know that there'd be any real surprises. If you look at our top 10 destination markets, we offer daily service to most of them. You start looking at the Orlandos and Vegas and some of these leisure destinations. Those carriers like Allegiant and Frontier are flying larger aircraft. So you're talking about 180 seat aircraft. And so even when you have 100 a day, it's just, you still need to fly that 2 to 3 times a week. But I'm not sure if there's any markets that would be a real surprise. I think it might be the other way. I think we overestimate as Northwest Arkansas how many people travel from here to, say, a Seattle or a Boston or San Francisco. It's just not as many people a day as you think. There are a lot of people every week, but it's anecdotal. When you look at it, it's 30, 40 people a day. It's not enough to support a daily flight.
Yeah. Well, and I do have a follow-up question to that. But I do want to remind everybody on this, because we have a lot of people on this call. This is a live discussion. If you have a question, remember, the only dumb question is the one you don't ask, right? So please, please, please post a question. And if I can get to it, I will. We've got some experts here and certainly some time to share and give you some feedback on. My follow-up question to this, and then we do have one question that just popped up, Andrew, and this is for you, and maybe Ed, you can chime in as well. When it comes to like what I would determine to be maybe leakage, in the sense that people going from here, Northwest Arkansas, and traveling to Tulsa to fly, or traveling to MCI, which is Kansas City's airport, to fly, or even going down to Dallas to fly, because and the reason why I'm asking this is because I was looking for a flight. I had to go see my son in Brazil not too long ago. And I could not find an inexpensive fare out of any of those airports. And for whatever reason, I found a cheap fare out of Austin. But it was just something I had to do. And I went to go see my son. It was almost literally half the price of what it would have cost to come out of any of these local airports that are within our region here. I'm curious to know, as an airport, do you track the leakage that happens when people are going to other airports that are nearby?
Yes, and it's there's some art to it more than even science, because obviously, again, airlines don't share all the information with us. So some of that calculation is based off of, say, for like a corporate customer, where is the credit card zip code? So, I mean, if there's a person that lives in Northwest Arkansas that works for a vendor, maybe a Walmart vendor, that the head office is in Cincinnati, we'll say there's one we know up there, right? They may not show up as a Northwest Arkansas passenger in the DOT data. So again, this is something Edward can talk about more. We use cell phone data. We find that that's a little more accurate, but we run kind of in tandem the traditional DOT leakage studies that account for some of it, and then cell phone studies. But yeah, there is some leakage, to Tulsa and Kansas City. Those are probably the 2 big ones.
Yeah.
Edward could probably talk more to the methodology.
I don't know if am I able to share a screen, Randy?
Yeah, you should be able to.
So I will, yeah, I will do. I'll just do it. We hadn't planned on this, but
No, it's fine.
Andrew can't stop me, and he and I have the same impeccable taste in facial hair. So I don't think he's going to mind. This is a view through May of this year,
Mhm.
showing what we call our catchment area. This area here sort of been expanded a little bit. That shows how we do in terms of market share for all routes. We just in order here I can scroll down, but you can see here that XNA in red from this primary catchment captures. You can't see the math here, but I'm from Alabama, so math is optional anyway. But somewhere around 80 to 85% of the people who take a trip out of this area choose XNA.
Okay.
And nobody gets great market. The ones who are getting some additional, some passenger traffic here, they're getting, at most about 10% of the total individually. And, Tulsa gets the most, Springfield gets a little, but overall, XNA performs very well. If you think about airports that everybody would know, like Los Angeles International, LAX, the largest origination destination airport in the world, only retains about 90% of its traffic.
Hmm.
It loses about 10% to Long Beach and Burbank and some other people that are in proximity to LAX. So even an airport that big and that successful, still, you can't keep everybody. XNA isn't quite at that level, but it's close. That's very good performance. And this is based on, as Andrew said, this is based on first party cell phone data from 75% of all US smartphones, trillions of observations nationwide a month, obviously not quite trillions in Northwest Arkansas, but a lot. A statistically valid sample of people who fly, doesn't care what airline you're flying. And so we can see by zip code and by route what's happening. And if you even expand it, we have sort of a larger, what we call aspirational catchment, where we're looking to penetrate deeper into the swing zones or the contention zones between us and Tulsa and Springfield in particular. And even at that point, when you make that zone larger, you can see XNA still had what we would call dominant performance, right? So there's a lot of talk in the market about leakage, and yeah, to the extent that you want 100% of your passengers, you're always going to be disappointed. XNA's performance in this regard, in large part because of its breadth and depth of service, and the strength of the local market, performs exceptionally well.
Yeah. Well, and
We
I
do.
love that because numbers never lie, right? I mean, as far as this is concerned, and it sounds like what you're telling me is that I was more of an outlier than anything else, in terms of my personal experience having to go down to Austin to catch a flight.
Right.
So yeah, no, this is really helpful.
Well, Randy, I would tell any airline that would take a passenger from Northwest Arkansas who would let him drive to Austin to catch a flight, I would tell them not to fly that person. You you were in the car, what, 8 hours?
Yeah, listen, it was enough of a savings, especially when you were traveling with a family of four,
I
that it
I,
made sense. So
I
yeah,
understand.
trust. Yeah, and I'm
Yeah, you're an outlier for sure.
well, yeah, and I think too, one of the things, like for me, it's not, and we have a lot of people that are moving from the coast. So like you just said, you said LA. When you live in
Yeah.
LA, and I lived there for a while, you have the choice of multiple airports: Burbank, John Wayne, Long Beach, LAX, of course. Living in New York City, right outside of New York City, I had three options. I had LaGuardia, I had JFK, I had Newark. And so, when you come from different parts of the country where you have multiple airport options, you don't think that much about traveling to go a distance. That's why, like, I hadn't really thought about Tulsa being like so far away that, oh, I can't go to Tulsa. But I love the fact that the numbers that you're sharing support the effort that we're still retaining a lot of people from our region in our area that are riding down the road, and heading on over to that wonderful airport that we have out
Yeah.
there. So
Yeah, our goal is to maintain the market share we have in what we call the primary catchment, and grow our share of traffic from the secondary catchment. And all the things that the airport's pursuing so far seem to be achieving, or on path rather, to achieve that goal.
yeah, absolutely,
I
absolutely.
would say though, so Edward said you'll never get 100%, and if that's your goal, you'll be disappointed. We want 100%. We know that's not realistic.
Yeah.
And again, if we're getting 80 to 85% of the traffic, in our mind, that means 15 to 20% are having to go to other airports, and that is a sizable number of people. I will say though that the flights we have are full. So a portion of it is literally they're going and getting empty seats at another airport that just has more empty seats.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the truth. Yeah, that the flights are always full, and it's always nice when you get on a flight from another city back to XNA and you're actually on a bigger jet as
Mhm.
opposed to a regional plane. So, which is really nice. A couple of questions have come up, Andrew, and these kind of really speak to your purview, but. Can you speak to the current construction and what is the purpose, vision, and end goal? And interestingly enough, and we'll have to put something in the notes for this particular episode, but our first ever episode of Onward Ozarks was about the construction and the design of XNA and the expansion. And that's been several years ago. And people, I still are, I've had people ask me questions about what the plans are at the airport. And I'm like, there's smarter people that can answer that, but you happen to be in the room. So I'd love for you to take a stab at this and kind of share a little bit of the vision and plans for this wonderful expansion at the airport.
There are smarter people that can answer this, but they're not with us today. So I'll try. But I think and we've had some questions, concerns, complaints. They think this is a lot of the construction going on is just for aesthetics. Obviously, that's a nice benefit. The terminal was built in the mid to late 90s, and I think at the time it was designed to handle 500,000 passengers, right? Well, we got pretty close to 1 million outbound passengers last year, and there's no indication that that's going to slow down. We're going to keep growing. So it's really about being able to put more people through the funnel, right? We need more lanes to handle car traffic in the front. We need to get traffic off of that. There's some plans for that. We need to be able to put more people through the lobby. We need to get more vertical circulation. We have more and more passengers that have mobility needs that need assistance. So you need elevators. We need escalators. So we have one elevator pre-security, and we have one set of escalators. Well, when those go down, what do you do? I mean, if somebody's in a wheelchair, how do you get them in? Well, I'll tell you how you do it. You get an airline passenger, a police officer, and you have to wheel them back through a less pleasant experience to get them into basically a service elevator. And that's not acceptable. So the new construction out front will have 2 elevators in the lobby, have 2 sets of escalators, and then obviously a couple sets of stairs. And so vertical circulation is huge when you're trying to get people to, a jet bridge height to get on these planes. So area, vertical circulation, new baggage claim equipment, that equipment was 20 plus years old. And then, there's some aesthetics. I mean, obviously it's a 25-year-old terminal. It needed some refreshing as well. But then also just integrating more technology into the experience, having the ability for the airlines to put in more kiosks as that becomes more of a automated process.
Yeah.
So a lot of infrastructure you don't see.
Yeah. And there's going to be a new lounge, right?
Yep. The lounge is coming. They're still planning on November of this year. It's escape lounges.
Okay.
That's optimistic. I think it maybe slips to early next year. Crystal Bridges Gallery, we've got that coming. We're looking at a kids play area, some additional seating options, just trying to fit everything we can. The concourse was built for planes that, seat 50 to 80 people. And we're seeing more and more of these 150, 180 seat planes. So space is at a premium, and we're trying to kind of juggle around with it. And then with all the construction costs being what they are, we're fairly limited on what we can build.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think it's going to be exciting because, like I said, I hadn't been in the airport for a while, and I got in there a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, man, I saw the slim chickens, which is like the first thing you see when you come out of security. It looks great. I mean, everything looks really good there. And it's just, there is a vibrancy that you see there in the airport. And I must say too, the staff at the airport are amazing. There are some really genuinely nice people, especially if you're stuck there waiting for a flight or there's a delay. People are just really gracious and nice, which is, I think that's a welcome addition, right? When you think about what travel experiences have been like historically, like in the last, decade or so around the country. So it's just nice to tell a good story sometimes.
Yeah. And I would note, so this is something that I think most people don't realize. So XNA employs about 70 people total. That's with police and fire, all of our staff. So most of the people you interact with that provide really, like I said, mostly great service are working for the government, like TSA. They have, 100 and some odd people out here. And then all the airlines and vendors. We constantly are telling folks when their planes are delayed or their baggage is delayed that we don't touch that. But I should also say when you're having a good experience, you're probably interacting with one of these great vendors. We have great airline personnel, rental car personnel, concessions personnel. There's 900 and some odd people that have an airport badge that work here in some capacity, but most of them are not us. We're happy to have them.
Yeah. And then I will, Nancy Lang, I had a follow-up question to that, which was, does Andrew know anything about the plan to extend the 612 connector? I will mention to Nancy and to everybody watching that we actually did it in Onward Ozarks episode about some of the expansion going around in Northwest Arkansas. And one of the conversations was the 612 connector. So I really want to encourage you guys to go back and watch that episode. There was a lot of really good information that Phil Taldo shared about that and what that expansion is going to look like. And they keep trickling out new information. But is there anything you want to add, Andrew, specifically about the 612 connector?
So the construction has begun. Crossland is down there moving dirt as we speak. I think the projected opening is early 2027. It's an incredible number of overpasses and bridges on the four, I think 3 or 4 miles that spans. They're also building the western piece of the 412 connector. So it'll connect, you'll be able to go west to Siloam Springs or go east over to 49. You'll have a 4-lane interstate, kind of quality highway. And then you get about 9/10 of a mile. It'll go down to 2 lanes. You'll come to a traffic light across from the south entrance of the airport. So it's going to be really good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ed, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I did. So all the stuff Andrew's saying about construction and the projects are right on. I think what's great about XNA, I wish Andrew were on the phone. He's going to think I'm saying this just a curry favor, which is probably only partly true. But ultimately, airports, don't control the 2 most important things that passengers cite when they talk about airport choice, and that's the price and the frequency of flights to where I want to go. In the long run, airports can influence that to a degree by driving passenger preference for their airport, especially when they're competing. And that's what XNA is trying to do. But the other thing they can control is the airport experience and making it something that people would demand or prefer over their options. So the things that XNA is doing, whether it's a choice of concessions or how you treat the customer or any of those things, is all part of a functional and effective integrated commercial plan to drive customer preference for XNA. So it's not just about construction. It's about what does that affect? What's the effect of that construction on the experience? What does that produce that will make XNA a more desirable place for people to begin or end their journeys if they're accessing the region at large?
Yeah.
And that will affect airlines' choice of where to fly.
So while Edward's bragging on us, the other thing we can control, and again, we can't control, one of the common discussions we have is airfare price, and we have zero input or control. We're not consulted on how much you're charged on a ticket. But what we do is we charge the airlines to be here, right? And so we measure that in another acronym. We love acronyms. It's called CPE. It's cost per enplanement. So that's the cost an airline pays for the facilities here per outbound passenger. So enplanement's the folks that are flying out. And last year we were at $7.91 all in that we charge the airlines to be here, including landing fees, rental in the terminal, everything else. To give you a comparison, Tulsa was a little bit more. They were $8.61 a passenger. Little Rock was $11.67 a passenger. Springfield was a little less at $6.46. So if you're paying $400, $500, $600 a ticket to get Dallas or more, and you think it's us, we're getting $7, roughly $7 to $8 of that cost comes to us. So it's a very small piece that the airport actually is getting, and it doesn't vary. If you pay more, we don't get more. It's that amount.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually mentioned that, because one of the questions on here from Craig Petit, and if I pronounced your name incorrectly, forgive me, but he said he was asking about often the higher cost of flights in and out of XNA. Many consumers of these flights say they believe they are paying higher prices due to the many local corporations using these same routes for business travel. Thus, these business travelers are used to paying higher prices, which drive up higher prices, thereby squeezing other travelers out of the market at XNA. And you're saying that that's not actually the situation.
Well, I'll clarify. So what I'll say is again, I think I know I hit on this earlier. We probably would not have many of the nonstop destinations we have, or six airlines for that matter, if not for the corporate customers. Here, whether the airport would exist is arguable. What I'll say is that airlines are very savvy. They know who their customers are. They have very sophisticated pricing models that are meant to extract maximum revenue, is what you'd expect a private business to do. We have a very strong market. We have very strong demand, and we have a lot of customers that can afford to pay these prices. And so, as long as airlines are able to charge what they can charge, they'll continue to do it.
Yeah.
We're a very
Hey,
strong.
Randy, sorry,
Ed,
Andrew,
go ahead. No, it's
Go
fine.
ahead. Go ahead.
just to add to that, uh, two things. One, I think that, bearing in mind that what you'll often hear anecdotal stories of people doing stuff like I actually heard recently, Randy, somebody that went all the way down to Austin, Texas to catch a flight. But those are there are examples of that, but the numbers, as Andrew said earlier, tend not to lie. We know that the vast majority of people who are accessing the region or coming from the region still choose to fly at XNA. On the other hand, the issue about fares, it's indisputable that the XNA average fare is higher than people like, because they tell us that, and we look at the numbers and we see that it's higher than the average fare nationwide. Of course, that's a number so broad as to be almost meaningless. But what we can see is that since 2019, the gap between XNA and the national average is converging. And it's converging for two reasons. The average fare nationwide has crept up since 2019 in the post-COVID world. The average airfare is higher, but XNA's has decreased. Yeah. So while that gap used to be, I'm making this up, somewhere in the order of $40 or $50, it's about half that now, and about 2/3 of that movement had come from a lowering of the average fare at XNA.
Yeah.
So we're not telling anybody they should like the average fare, right? So that's not our place. But to talk about the facts, yeah, is the average fare higher? It is. There's some reasons behind that, but that gap is narrowing, and we would expect that to continue to narrow and converge, because ultimately, as Andrew has pointed out, airlines are in the business of making money, and one way they decide where to add flights is where they're profitable. And if they're making more money at XNA, they're going to tend to invest, all other things being equal. Yeah. Self-identifying as a recovering economist. All other things being equal, they're going to invest more capacity where the fares are better, and they're going to take it from places where they're not as good. And XNA is a very strong market regionally compared to its competitors for the airlines.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. And just while I have you, Ed, as far as that's concerned, based on those numbers you shared with us earlier, is there a breakdown between business versus recreational travel on that?
Not using the cell phone data, we could make some inferences, but we try not to make assumptions. That's the beauty, if you will, of the data set that we use and that we ingest through our model. We are able to look at fares that are paid through DOT reporting, and based on the specific fare buckets that people bought, you can make some judgments as to about how much is business versus leisure. I don't have those numbers in front of me. They'd be attainable, and like any good consultant, Andrew, always happy to add to our scope to answer that question for you for a fee.
Well, I think it's it's kind of like the old saying about projections. It's an estimate based on a guess carried to the third decimal place. The airlines know better than anybody what customers are largely business or leisure. They don't share that. They will not share that with us. So, anecdotally, we feel like we're probably, pretty close to a 50-50, which is sizable business traffic. I think typically nationally is about a third. Is that right, Edward? That's business travel is what they attribute.
I don't have a number in front of me. We know that it's probably 20% or more below what it was pre-COVID. I don't have a number in front of me, but the long-term trend suggests that business travel is never going to recover nationwide to what it was pre-COVID. A market like XNA is performing well right now because it bucks that trend.
Yeah. So, all right. So, and just to let everybody know, I haven't forgotten about the gift cards, $250 gift cards to the airline of your choice that flies out of XNA. Has to be an XNA flight because we're trying to promote and support XNA, obviously. But I will give those names out in 5 minutes. So just hang tight with me. I have a couple more questions for these wise gentlemen here on the call. So Andrew, XNA is having what appears to be a record-breaking year. And it seems almost certain that the airport will top 1 million passengers for the first time. Do we have any evidence that the airlines are noticing this on a system-wide scale? And this is probably, Ed, where you might be able to chime in. And how do you, like, again, even though we're seeing this whole kind of ships passing in the nights thing, how do you tell them about it? Or how can you be confident that the revenue management people at the airlines are communicating with the route planners in a way that tells the XNA story, right? Because you're an XNA storyteller.
We are. And so we do get a couple opportunities a year to do what we jokingly refer to as speed dating with the airlines. And you get in front of them and you share things. You know, historically airports go in there and they tell them all the stuff they already know. They have this DOT data. They obviously know their revenue and customer mix more than anybody. They see the growth. I mean, from 22 to 23, XNA grew at about, close to 20%. If you look at the official FAA numbers, and we're up another 10, 11% this year. The way I can tell you that they notice and they are noticing is that they're adding seats. They're adding seats. We're getting bigger planes. We're getting more frequencies. And again, it's to Edward's point. If you have full planes and you have higher fares, planes get moved to your market. Seats get moved to your market. That's how they judge success. It's you're growing the seats. Edward could probably give better figures on how many seats were added. And then but it is largely a zero-sum game. If we're getting seats, another market that had planes that were not as full, where the fares were lower, lost those seats.
Yeah.
So they're definitely, the revenue management and network planners are all in tune to this, and they're adding in capacity to XNA because of that.
Ed, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think when when you think about behavioral economics, you talk about the difference between stated preference and revealed preference. And when Andrew goes and does his speed dating thing, he's hearing stated preference, and then we look at what do they actually do for reveal. XNA has been one of the success stories in the industry for the last year. Things are cooling off a bit now because the year-over-year comps are a little tougher. But still, if you look at our regional competitors at Springfield, Tulsa, Joplin, Fort Smith, XNA is growing anywhere from 50% to 100% faster than those competitive airports and at or higher than the industry average. So the revealed preference for airline planners for XNA is clear.
Yeah. I would imagine with us being one of the fastest growing MSAs in the country, obviously we've got a Fortune 1, we have several Fortune 500 companies. All of that helps, right? And in an area that's not that big when you think of it in terms of size, but all of that helps and supports XNA's efforts to, play with the big boys and girls, if you will.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Another question, this came up, and this is something I've always thought about. Ray Hernandez asked, ground transportation is lacking in Northwest Arkansas, period, which impacts choices of travelers. Is there any effort to work with mass transit in the future, especially as it pertains to serving the airport?
It's welcome. We've had some conversations since I've been here. Airports are very highly regulated by the FAA on what we can and cannot do. We cannot subsidize transportation. We can't pay for any transportation off the airport. We welcome any way that the region wants to bring passengers to the airport. I mean, I think that would be that, to sum it up. If mass transit were to have a connection to the airport, we would love that.
Yeah. Okay. Ozark Regional Transit. I hope you're watching. So, all right. So we are it's 9:44. We're going to go ahead and announce the first winner of the $250 XNA airline gift card. And that winner is Jeffrey Floyd. You need to say that you're on the link in the next 5 minutes or so, and then pick which airline you want to use. And we will take care of the rest of it via email to get that information to you. But you've got to respond in line here right now. And the second winner is Catherine Grubbs, who must also do the same exact thing. So if Jeffrey Floyd and Catherine Grubbs are here, we want to encourage you guys to raise your hand, acknowledge that you're here, and we will go ahead and get that information to you. And somebody internally will ask you what airline you prefer your gift card for, and so that you can use it flying out of XNA. And maybe Andrew will meet you at the gate and say hello to you on your trip. So no promises, but so because I've just give a shout out to Andrew. Last year I needed some help with something and I reached out to him, and he was so kind to try to help me out. And that was before they have a new policy now, which, Andrew, would you talk about that policy? Because I think that's important, especially for people that are sending kids by themselves, or you have, like, I had an elderly mom that I was trying to get to the gate, and talk about that, because a lot of people don't know that with just with the way security is.
Yeah, so it's not a new thing for if you have somebody with mobility issues or a child. Typically the airlines could issue a pass to get you through the TSA checkpoint. It's at their discretion. You still have to go through a system you never see called TSA Secure Flight. It basically is the no-fly list. So they've allowed airports now to issue those passes ourselves without having to have a reason. You don't have to have somebody that's needing assistance. And so we have a thing called the XNA Day Passes. We have a kiosk in the lobby that you can use 24/7 while the TSA checkpoint's open. And it'll issue a pass free of charge that's like a boarding pass. And then you go through the TSA checkpoint with your ID and that pass. If it all works, again, there are times when the TSA system will be down or our kiosk will have an issue. We try to keep that as minimal as possible, but it's available. We have probably 800 or 900 people a month that have used it the last few months. And yeah, if you have somebody flying in, you want to meet them at the gate and surprise them, we welcome you to come do that. Or if
That's very cool.
want to spend the last hour while somebody's here before they fly out, you can do that.
Now, if you have a known traveler number, does that make it even easier?
Not really. So it doesn't give you any kind of pre-check
Okay.
special condition. That the TSA doesn't have that capability on this program.
No, I understand. Okay, cool. Cool. All right. So listen, there's a lot of questions in here, and I just want to let's see. There's a bunch of good questions in here. Yeah, so one question is, and this is something that came up in terms of marketing and advertising at the airport. I've noticed a lot of people advertise at XNA. I would assume, and some of the same people advertise all the time. I'm assuming that there is some ROI on that advertising there with all of the captured eyeballs that you receive coming through that terminal.
Absolutely. So airports we are forbidden from basically making a profit off of airlines. And so airlines, we have what they call a compensatory rate base. So we can charge them for the cost, but it's only the cost attributed to the airline. So the rest of the terminal, the parking facilities, all these other things that we have to be supported by something. And so we use concession revenues, parking revenues, and then advertising. And yeah, we have a very strong demand, obviously, with a lot of the corporate customers here to advertise in the terminal. There used to be a lot of static advertising. We had gotten some feedback from some members of the community that maybe it was a bit much. So we've dialed that back and we switched to primarily digital. But yeah, anybody that wants to advertise in the airport, just email business.development@flyxna.com. I think we also have the brochure on our website that you can find as well. And yeah, we always have opportunities. It does stay pretty full. And it's pretty competitive, but we'll get you on the list. We'd love to have you advertise here.
Yeah.
Randy, it's funny. I saw that question from Paul Dunkel. I actually interpreted it differently than how you guys did. Maybe it's right. So if Paul wants to clarify, great. If not, being a consultant who's used to being paid by the syllable, I'm going to keep talking until somebody tells me to stop. So I interpreted it more about how can we tell, is there an ROI on what the airport is doing to market itself? And that's how I interpreted it, because that's where I live. So I might be wrong, but on the off chance that that's what he means, I'll start answering it, and I'll be brief, but I'll illustrate with a couple of examples. So our commercial objective for the airport, which we map out sort of as part of a 5-year strategy that we refresh every year to have sort of a playbook for the year. But our long-term strategy is that we want to grow our share of seats as in part of the regional market, meaning XNA plus Fort Smith, Joplin, Tulsa, Springfield. We want to have a larger share of seats in the region than we had in 2019. So we want to grow ourselves up to the market. And we want to have our share of passengers grow at least as fast or faster than the share of seats. So we want to have seats grow, and we want to have our passengers grow at least that fast, if not faster. That's our sort of a long-term market strategy. So the two things we could talk about in order to demonstrate if it's working, without sharing screens again, is our share of seats and passengers of the region has actually been growing, especially since COVID. So we're on track to do that. And then in terms of actual performance, I'm just looking at some material from our advertising agency, Rev 365, who does great work for the airport. They work with us, not for us. So this is not a blatant suck up. It's an actual, this is actually sincere. Unlike when I say something nice about Andrew. All the performance metrics for their advertising campaigns are off the charts. I'll give you a quick example. Your typical click-through rate on an ad on Google is about 10% in the aviation or the transportation vertical. We get over 14%. So the ads are highly engaging and people are motivated. We're also seeing typically you're looking for a cost per click when you're doing paid search of $1 or less, and they're currently getting about 45 cents. So the campaign is being very effective at generating interest and clicks from the right people. And then we're seeing the last thing I'll say, we get informal, I'll say, feedback from airlines about how markets performing. And without going into detail, unless Andrew wants to touch on it, I'll let him do it. There was one market in particular where airlines expressed some concern and wanted to see some improvement. The airport focused some resources on that, along with some other things, in order to be compliant with airport regulations. And the airline responded, "Whatever you're doing is working. Keep doing it."
Yeah,
That's their way of reaffirming it, what your
And
process.
that's about the most information you'll ever get from an airline.
So that's considered a win then.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And our goal is to fill up all the planes, so they'll bring more planes, bigger planes, and then eventually, I mean, again, the goal is that you bring in more competition that would, as the market grows and you get competition and options, that the prices would maybe be more appropriate for the different options people are looking for.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Paul said thank you because he was looking at it from both growth strategies. I mean, Paul, that's why we bring smart people on here like Ed and Andrew, because we answer all your questions, even multifaceted ones. So thank
I
you
got to
both.
plug our advertising program, so that was kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Aaron Stewart said, Andrew, this is for you. Your AI videos on your website for the new pickup drop-off zones are extremely helpful and a fantastic idea. My drivers have had nothing but positive feedback about the new drop-off zone. Is there a plan for car services / taxis on a pickup zone other than the general public lane?
During construction, no. After construction, yes. So we have dedicated, ride share and taxi and shuttles and all that kind of stuff in the completed thing. Right now, it's just so constrained. There's just not enough space to have dedicated anything. And it's really about flowing traffic through. We've already pulled all the large buses off the front of the terminal. They run through the center of the parking area, which is a little longer walk if you're getting on or off a large bus, but we just had to do it. Again, the front of this building was built for 500,000 passenger airport, and we're at 1 million, going towards 1.5 million in the coming years. And so traffic is just, it's going to continue to be an issue. It's good. I appreciate the positive feedback. We launched the drop off area and everything on Saturday. It obviously, anytime you do something drastic like that, there've been some hiccups. We've added some additional signage last night. From what I saw yesterday to today, we've added some things. We're going to do some more striping and marking. Nabholz is the contractor that's handling all of this, and they've been just amazing and helpful. So, but yeah, I mean, keep giving us feedback. We'll take good feedback, negative feedback, whatever you got. We'll keep trying to make it work better. But there will be hiccups. We apologize for that, and we'll keep working on it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we have a few minutes left. I know there were 2 questions that Edward wanted to answer. One from Walter Burgess, which was a random question about when does it become commercially viable to take a significant county airport without passenger service to an airport with limited passenger service? Is there a segment of the population that wants to avoid large airports? I would have to imagine there are, Edward, but you can answer.
Yeah, there are. It's sort of a catch-22. People want smaller airports, but they don't like to connect. So it's a bit of a both. I think the reason this question is interesting, I'll answer the question he's asking, but then transfer it over to XNA. There are actually several, but what I think he's asking is, are there airports that don't have commercial service that are switching to having passenger service? And the answer is yes. There's actually a lot of those going on right now. McKinney, Texas is a great example. I noticed some of our friends from Garver on the phone. We actually work on that project with Garver down in North Texas, where they are looking to become a commercial service airport in the summer of 2026, and have airlines that are interested. So that's happening. Gulf Shores, Alabama, near where I live, is doing the same thing. New Haven, Connecticut has been very successful at doing that. They were commercial service, but they didn't really have much. They got a commitment from one of the startup airlines, Avelo, and they've been very successful there in the last couple of years. So that sort of thing is absolutely happening. The reason that I think that's meaningful for XNA is, as Andrew says, despite the fact that we retain the vast majority of passengers, you always want to try to do better. And I think that, the more options that XNA offers, and as it continues to succeed, and as the market continues to grow, things that are not currently viable, for service nonstop will potentially become viable, and that offering will expand. Because people do. I mean, there are occasionally people who drive to Kansas City and St. Louis and even DFW, not huge numbers, but some.
Even Austin.
And Austin. Yeah, I've only heard of one doing that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Randy.
I think that, but there absolutely is a segment that wants to avoid it, and that plays to XNA strengths. The challenge is going to be over time, as Andrew continues to work on the facility and making the experience better. At some point in the future, the largest airport in the region is going to be XNA, and that day is not far off.
Right. Right. And I would probably say to anyone, I know there were some other questions in here about some of the facilities internally in the airport. And, it's just like with anything, there are going to be growing pains. And especially I can remember, like, traveling through Logan Airport when it was going through its whole redo. And I was like, man, this place is a dump. And then all of a sudden, like overnight, it was like, Sleeping Beauty. It just transformed into something. And you were like, wow, this place is amazing. And it's always incredible to see those transformations at airports, both big and small, and how once they're done, it's like, you're like, wow, you're really proud of what you see. And so my simple advice, just as a common traveler to anybody asking those questions, I know it gets challenging, but just, you have to give it some time. And I know, Andrew, you probably field those questions more often than not, but patience is a virtue, especially when it comes to this situation.
Yeah, I mean, we appreciate everybody's patience. I think the big thing is when you have to grow your facilities, and you have to do it in a building with 2 million people a year coming through, in and out, and you can't close. I mean, so what the alternative what would be the alternative? I mean, if we have to have a bigger terminal for this new traffic that's coming, and that's here, there's just not a lot of options. So we try to make it as little disruption to people as we can, but it's tough. So just please bear with us. It's going to be great when it's done, and hopefully we won't have to do anything to the front of the terminal for, I mean, again, it's been 25 years. Hopefully it'll be another, 10, 15 years. I mean, we were growing fast. So I hate to overshoot it.
Easily. Well, I mean, if we hit the numbers that we're supposed to hit for 2045 of 1 million people, I'm sure there'll be some modifications required on or before that time. So I want to congratulate Jeffrey Floyd for choosing the Delta Airlines gift certificate. That's my airline of choice. But congratulations, Jeff, for getting that. And Catherine Grubbs chose Allegiant. So congrats to you both for winning $250 gift certificates. Let me know when I need to pack my bags for our trip, and I will be right in touch with you for that upcoming vacation. So I'm looking forward to it. So, all right, we have like literally like 2 minutes left. Do you want to give your last thoughts? And Edward, I will start with you first, and then we'll let Andrew have the last word before we close out.
Yeah, I would just say, first of all, thanks for allowing me to participate in this forum today, Randy. It's been a real pleasure to be here and have a chance to talk with you and to interact, at least through chat, with your devoted listeners here. There are some really great questions. I think the future for XNA is bright. The key to winning in this game is to have a community that is aligned around a common goal, and we see more of that. And it's not perfect, but we see more of it in XNA than we see it in a lot of communities that we work in around the country. So I would say keep doing what you guys are doing, get better where you can, but stay aligned on a common purpose to drive success of the region in conjunction with the airport, and you guys are going to be you'll be in pretty good shape.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. And Andrew, in your close, if there's even a remote chance that you think that XNA will ultimately become an international airport in the next 5 to 10 years, what's the over under on that?
So what I'll say is the trend is it just industry wide. We haven't really touched on this, is to larger aircraft going to fewer direct destinations, more funneling through the hubs. We have less than 600,000 people. In 2045, we're going to be at about 1 million people. It's possible to eventually have, an occasional flight to Cancun or something like that, but that does take U.S. Customs and Border Protection typically. And they would have to either decide to come here, or somebody would have to decide to pay for that service to be here. And it's a 7-figure proposition each year. So slim in the next 5, I mean, maybe in the next 10, who knows? I mean, the world's going to change a lot in the next 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think
As
to
for
close,
sure.
I mean, thanks for having us. I really appreciate all the positive comments we've gotten in the chat, and the questions are great. And appreciate the opportunity to be able to serve the community in this role. XNA will continue to grow and thrive just like the community's growing and thriving. And we're going to keep trying to make it better and better, make it your best option to travel from XNA.
Well, he is Andrew Branch, Chief Operating Officer of XNA, and he was joined up with us today by Edward Shelswell-White, Chief Vision and Customer Officer with Signal Aviation Consulting. I want to thank you guys both for joining us today. I want to thank the Northwest Arkansas Council for coming up with the whole idea of Onward Ozarks and what it represents to our region. Thank you all for joining us today, because without you guys, you make it all possible in the first place. So thank you all very much. I hope you go out and have a great, productive day, and we will see you back here soon with another new Onward Ozarks program. Everybody have a wonderful day.